How's it going, guys? My name's Jacob, and welcome to the Hook J Podcast. On today's episode, I am alone. It's just me, and we're going to talk a little bit about what happened last week in the MMA community. So over the weekend, UFC Fight Night 152 happened, which was headlined by RDA and Kevin Lee in Rochester, New York. It was a pretty decent card. I liked watching it. It was fun. So let's just get into the highlights of the card. First highlight was Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz. That was a fairly good one. A little surprising KO. I didn't see that one coming out of nowhere, really. It was round two. I did think Oliveira was going to get it going into the fight. I didn't really, expect Nick Lentz to do much. He's a very great fighter, however. He's 30-10 or so now. So he's been through some wars, but I did think Oliveira was just a little more slick with his technique and would get it. Going forward from that, the next highlight we'd like to talk about is the Megan Anderson versus Felicia Spencer. Felicia Spencer. She got the submission in round one, which was really surprising because Megan Anderson is somebody they've built up consistently since she's got in the UFC. She was an Invicta champ and everything, and she had this giant build up getting in, and she's had a few, I think like one or two wins in the UFC. And she's trying to get this sort of momentum and keep it going, but she just couldn't do it with this one. Felicity took her down. Basically just capitalized on it and got her back, and it was pretty much over from there. She did tap. I did think it was funny when she was tapping and it was on the opposite side, and it took the ref a few minutes to be like, oh, okay, let me see it from that angle. But she did tap. I believe it was a rear naked choke. But it was a decent fight. Very surprising to see someone capitalize and be able to out-grapple Miss Anderson on the ground. Then the final highlight of UFC Fight Night 152 was RDA versus Kevin Lee. I thought RDA was going to get it from the get-go. I didn't think Kevin Lee was going to do much. Kevin Lee is not necessarily my favorite fighter out there, especially in that division. To me, he's a good wrestler and everything, but he just doesn't have really what it would take as of right now. And what it takes is cardio, because he really, especially like round three, he started to slow down quite a bit, and it really shows. With the Ferguson fight, you thought maybe, just maybe, it had to do with the staph infection on his chest, him slowing down. But after this one, it makes you think, like, maybe his cardio just isn't quite up there. He was breathing really heavy and everything. He did get a knockdown in, I think, the first round. I'm not 100% of that. But I remember him clipping RDA, but RDA managed to come back and submit him with an arm triangle, out of all things, which was interesting. But it's one of those things going forward. Do I think RDA, he's got a little momentum going. He's pushing the ball uphill right now, and I think that's something that's good for him. I think Kevin Lee, he's kind of a, as a wrestling term, he's a mid-card guy. I don't see him doing much after that, but you never know. He could 180 this thing, turn it completely around. He seemed really down after the fight. In a lot of his post-fight interviews, he seemed second-guessing himself. Maybe this has a severe psychological effect on him, which it could possibly. But on top of that, you got to go, well, maybe he can 180 himself. Maybe he can be like, all right, whatever I did, this, and this, it's not working. Let me change it completely. Like Khalil Roundtree, where he's like, obviously this isn't working, moves to Thailand, comes back with a viciousness that I am ready to see him fight again, which I'm happy he's got a fight coming up. Anyway, but that pretty much ends UFC Fight Night 152 with all the small highlights we got here. I did want to go over a couple smaller things that happened through the MMA universe that is vast and ever expanding. Sage Northcutt and his one championship debut did not go his way at all. And it was fairly interesting to see him fight a guy who was a multiple-time world championship kickboxer and Muay Thai specialist lose. Right, he it did not go his way. He fought it more of a karate style, kept his hands low. He gets hit with this hellacious right. He drops immediately, like he's in severe pain. And it turns out after the fight, he had to go have surgery almost immediately because he has 8 fractures on his skull. All right, all around his eye socket and everything is just crumbled. Right, he had to go to basically emergency surgery right then, and for them to fix it. But I thought the audacity that Deadspin had on reporting this, saying that it was his minor league MMA debut, did not go his way. Yeah, it's not minor league, man. It's one championship. They're one of the biggest MMA promotions in the world. Not even just MMA, like just combat sports in general. And you call them minor league. And on top of that, you're also stating that the guy he fought, the multiple-time world champ in 2 different types of sports, is minor league. The balls on you as a reporter to call that minor league is amazing and astounding. And it shows the lack of pretty much any reporting ability that you have if you're calling something like that a minor league. That upsets me. You know, I feel sorry for Sage because his basically his left side of his face is crumbled and he had to go into surgery. He seems in good spirits about it. I hope he makes a full recovery. But you know, just like the balls for anybody to go, oh, it's not here in America, so you know it has to be minor league. It doesn't make any sense at all, and I don't like Deadspin to begin with. I did see that pop up on my my Twitter feed. And I was immediately like, you guys are stupid. I think I even commented on it. But it was one of those things, I couldn't believe it when it came across my phone. It was horrible to see that and go, well, you know, there's plenty of people on the community that were commenting about it that were like, oh, yeah, this is not minor league at all. You're stupid, which is you should comment on something like that. But there's people that read Deadspin. There's people that see it and go, oh, it's a minor league thing? Okay, whatever. And go over it. It shouldn't be like that at all. You should call it what it is. It's a professional fight. Say it's professional. Saying it's minor league discredits not only the athlete in it, the promotion itself, but everybody who says from that point forward, oh, they were in this championship, and then someone who read that goes, oh, the minor league one? It makes no sense. It made me a little pissed off. That's all I want to say. In other news, you've got BKFC, I think is what their letters are, right? Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Yeah, that's got to be it. They have their big promotion right now for Polly and Artem, which is going to be an interesting fight because these two supposedly hate each other. I don't believe Polly. First of all, Polly's a very awkward dude, and I never believe his trash talking, to say the least. I don't like the guy. Artem is an interesting dude by himself. He's very stoic, and I don't fully understand him either. However, they did have a press conference to promote the fight here. I think it's June 22nd. I think it's next month. But they had this thing, and you know they're doing the normal back and forth, talking shit to each other, talking about, oh, I did this, I'm gonna do that, and just everything that Paulie said during the press conference is just, you can't believe it. There's no sense of belief to what he's saying. Like, even if a guy was to sit there and go, I'm gonna fucking beat the shit out of you, I'm gonna knock your head off, I'm gonna do this, with Paulie's accent, the way he talks, and the way he looks, you're like, I don't know about that, man. Like, I don't believe you could do that. Like, you might be able to, but the way you're presenting it is completely wrong. And on top of that, first of all, if you haven't seen the video, go watch the video. Towards the end of the press conference, you know, like they normally do, they do the pushing and shoving and the, oh, I'm going to beat your ass, that whole thing. and he throws. They push each other, and Paulie hits him with the mic like a little bink, like he just tapped him on his head, and you're like, okay, that's that. Why would you do that? That makes no sense, I guess. But there's no real animosity between these two. You don't get that sense, right? It's you don't feel it, and I don't feel it there. I don't want to see it. If this is the way Paulie actually is when he's mad towards somebody, right? Where he's like, I'm gonna beat you, I'm gonna slap you, I'm gonna spit on you, which he did, by the way. That's something that I 100% like. Yeah, I don't like that. I think a lot of people in the fighting community don't like that. Like if you're gonna come at somebody with anger and say you're gonna beat them and all this other stuff, you're gonna beat somebody up, then do it. Stop pushing and shoving and spitting on people. Like essentially you're just asking for more. And on top of that, you're like, I don't think Paulie knows what he's getting into. Now, I'm not saying Artem is the greatest boxer out there. By far, if this was a boxing match, like an actual boxing match with gloves and everything, Paulie would probably win. Because more than likely, he's just going to sit there, dot him from a distance, move, dot him from a distance, move. That's what boxers do. However, with bare knuckle fighting, it's a little different. Not just because the gloves are off, because the rule sets. I don't think he understands that not only is it gloves are off, right? Well, I shouldn't say that. Reports came out today. It's a little different. I'll explain that in a minute. But not only are the gloves off, quote unquote, but on top of that, you're allowed to grab your opponent. You're allowed to dirty box a little more than anything. You're allowed to grab the back of the head and pull the opponent down. And that's something that I don't think Paulie is going to be able to really look towards or try to figure that out. On top of that, the amount of cuts on both of them are going to be extreme because the gloves, again, quote unquote, are off. Now, that's gonna open people up a little quicker. That's gonna make the damage seem a little worse than it is. But let's go forward now into the reports from today, where apparently Florida, which is where the event's set to be at, they put out like, we're not gonna allow you to fight without the gloves. So they're like, all right, we'll put gloves on, but we'll have the knuckles missing. Which I thought about, okay, if you're gonna have the knuckles missing, that means you're gonna have a seam around the knuckles at some point, depending how the gloves look, but there's going to be a seam there, which I think is probably going to open up a cut, a lot sooner. Again, it'll look safer from a distance, like, oh, they have gloves on. Well, I think it's going to be worse for cuts. I think it's going to open up people immediately. I think it's going to look worse to some people because it's not, like, bare knuckle in itself is brutal, right? But depending on who you watch, it's mostly body shots. Every now and then you'll get a headshot, bam, bam. And because you're getting those headshots and because there's no gloves, it cuts people open and it looks bad. But most of it's going to the body, to the chest. You're not going to throw full tilt into someone's face because there's a chance you might break your hands. So, to me, it's a little weird. It's just a little weird to say you're bare knuckled and put a glove on, because the cuts are going to get even worse than they already are, So I don't know how Paulie's going to do much against a guy who's already fought before in bare knuckle boxing. Maybe he just thinks, oh, I'll do this real quick, get the cash, leave, which I hope he does. I hope Paulie leaves. Hope he retires. I hope he stays retired. I don't like the guy. He's just trying to stay relevant. He wasn't relevant when he was boxing, which is saying a lot. Prior to the Conor McGregor thing, his biggest match was against Adrian Broner. If you boil his entire career down, his whole career comes down to saying, stop talking about my side piece during a post-fight interview. That's what it is. Prior to Conor being there and bringing him in for that fight camp, no one knew who he was. Prior to Conor bringing him in for that fight camp, no one knew who he was unless you were a boxing fan. He's not a household name. He's nobody, really, except for like diehards in the boxing community or people who paid attention a little bit to the Mayweather fight. That's it. Other than that, I mean, there's not much else happening. We do have a couple fights coming up. We have UFC Fight Night 153, which is the Gustafsson-Anthony Smith card, which is actually shaping up to be a fairly decent one. That's one that you should watch. As far as I know, everything is set. I don't think there's any pullouts so far, so it does look like a good card. You got Gustafsson versus Anthony Smith, which will be fairly good. You got Volkan versus Latifi, and you got Jimmy Manuwa on the card, which I don't think they have him set against anybody just yet. Maybe they're just still trying to figure out the contracts, but that's going to be fairly good. Other than that, I don't really think there's much I'm looking forward to, but this is just a quick update. Decided to put this out because I want to keep it a little more consistent with the podcast, so I figured a quick 15-20 minute one would be great. I know I'm talking really fast, but I just want to be more consistent with these. So with that being said, thank you guys. I appreciate your listening. I appreciate you liking, sharing, subscribing. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at HookedJP. My co-host, who's not here today, is at HookedJustin. Thank you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Hook J Podcast. Hope you enjoyed today's show. See you next episode.
Sometimes you've got to do what's right for you and not do what's right for everybody else.